What up, nation? Welcome to another edition of the Wise Take NFL DFS First Look. We are at week 14. That is right, week 14 of the NFL season. CK013 here. You can find me on Twitter at CK_013, and I'm joined once again by the GOAT. Right? The GOAT. Patio Joe. You can find him on Twitter at Patio Joe. Ref Joey, my man. What's happening, bro?
Not much. It is now. We just finished the game between Dallas and Baltimore, and we are now straight ahead onto week 14. It's a great slate. We have 13 games on the main slate, which is bigger than we've had since like week 3 or 4. And, for you seasonal folks, this is week 1 of the playoffs. So this is where it gets a little interesting. So I'm excited for this week for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I did not make the cut in my fantasy league. Needed a little bit of help. I was just ravaged by injuries, man. I had Michael Thomas. I had like the early stuff. I just had a hard time overcoming. I dealt with a bunch of them. But all in all, man, it was a wild season and season long. It really was, right? There was a big shakeup. If you drafted McCaffrey, he didn't play much. Like if you lasted and survived up into the playoffs, you're in good shape. But if you are on the outside looking in, you're just about to get him back, and that's tough, man. That's tough. How did you do in your? How are you looking in your season long teams?
Yeah, I mean, I had 6 leagues that I was in this year. Like only really like 4 that I like kind of pay attention to. One of them is a dynasty league sort of. So that one I did bad in. But my main league, like my home league that I'm the commissioner in. I'm in the playoffs. I finished 3rd in points, but the team that I have assembled is like, you know how it is, like you're playing right at the same time. You're playing your best at the right time. This team's got Chubb and Eckler as his running back, so they came back healthy. His wide receivers is probably the best in the league. I got DK Metcalf, Justin Jefferson, Calvin Ridley, Deontay Johnson, and Debo is on my bench. My tight end's Goddard. My quarterbacks is a super flex league is my one little hiccup that I wish I was a little better is I have Brady and I just kind of mix and match with like Trubisky or whoever. Like kind of like can get me 10 or 15 points. But yeah, I got a good squad that, very balanced. So I'm gonna be tough to beat. I'm really excited. I'm gonna be a tough out.
I like it, Joe. I like it. Keep the nation posted with that one.
Mm-hmm.
Moving on to week 14. Well, actually, before we move on to week 14, we have some review stuff to look at. So let me go ahead and get that pulled up here. Wise Take Listener League for week 13. Shout out to Solar Cub Power, who finished first in the Wise Take Listener League on DraftKings. Already settled up with him. Reached out to us on Twitter. Shout out to you. He had the Kirk Cousins stack. He did fade the Dalvin Cook on this. He had the triple stack with Thielen and Jefferson. Jefferson, obviously one of the top plays on the slate. Jefferson was 27% owned in our league, Joe. Thielen was 18. So I think the reason we saw that happen is because I think a lot of our people maybe didn't want to play as much Dalvin Cook. Understandably so at the price tag. Wayne Gallman, who gave him a decent return against Seattle, 135 rushing yards, Joe, against Seattle. Wild. And then, of course, the ultimate play would won him this tournament. Corey Davis in the flex, 9.1%, 38.2 DraftKings points, 182 receiving yards, and a receiving touchdown, 11 receptions. Corey Davis. It's funny because I remember in the Slack chat at one point, Fritz, who's a big Titans fan, had said that he didn't hate the idea. This was like earlier on in the week. He didn't mind like taking the savings of Corey Davis, and we talked about how that like was perfectly reasonable on a week like this. There was money that we thought we wanted to spend, and you were getting a pretty good discount to take Davis, who has been way more involved in the offense this year, albeit at times because AJ Brown was out. But he seems a little more with it, where last year it was kind of a one-man show in the passing game. So shout out to you. So look up power, man. A couple people.
Yeah, man, I like his lineup. I was on Cousins. Like, I don't feel like anybody in the industry was on Cousins. And I was like, he only puts up over 20 points every home game.
Mm-hmm.
And because it's like Minnesota like plays to their, like I said on the Friday Wide Stream, Minnesota plays to their competition. They're kind of like, the Chargers or whatever. Like, it's so weird that they kept Jacksonville in that game, so he had to throw for 300 yards, 3 TDs, and it paid off. You know what I'm saying?
Like, honestly, if you have the quarterback of a team that is favored, like a team that you believe has a better offense, and your concern is like, shit, like, I'm worried about them blowing them out. Like, there's nothing better than seeing them like trail. Like, we saw it time at a time with Dallas, with the Browns, and then obviously the Browns and Titans both went on to the. But even with Tannehill, as bad as that offense looked, look what Tannehill ended up doing to try to dig them out of that deficit. Some of it in garbage time. So there's nothing better than sitting there if you have Cousins and you see them fall behind. You're just like, okay, this is it. This is everything you could ask for. Quarterback was something I did hit on in my article. I only wrote up 4 this week, the stacks, and I know I had Carr in there. I forgot. I had Cousins was in there, Tannehill was in there, and then I think Jared Goff, who also did pretty well for his price with a 4 quarterback. So that was something I felt good with. Darren Waller, right? He doesn't even have Waller in this lineup, which is like wild. But Joe, guess who won the FanDuel Listener League? That's right. Guess who's got 2 thumbs and won the FanDuel Listener League? This guy.
Yeah.
This guy.
Nice.
Yes, I did it.
Very nice.
175 on FanDuel, Joe. I did better on FanDuel than I would have done. I mean, than I did on DraftKings. But I went with the Jared Goff stack, Joe. Jared Goff. I like the price. I went with Jonathan Taylor. Showed some stones, man. Got a little lucky. You can call it lucky. He was used in ways he's not normally used. David Montgomery. The reason I did well on FanDuel is because I played Kiki Kute more on FanDuel. I did not play Kiki Kute as much on DraftKings because I was so into Cooks. And then, Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, Darren Waller in the tight end slot, man. The baller, Darren Waller. He was in your core, right, Joe?
Yeah, he was. I mean, I talked about him, but he actually, my core was actually Ferkster.
Okay, you went
paid down in cash. I still played Waller in GPPs.
Right.
It just, I don't know. I was kind of hemming and hawing about like, what Waller do. I didn't think nobody thought he was going to have a day like that. I mean, come on, that's one of like the top days ever. But remember on the Y stream, me and Paulie kind of like, we didn't get into it, but we were just kind of on opposite sides. I was like, Waller's the option, go to Waller, and Paulie was like, pay down, And so, it's still, Ferkster wasn't bad either. He got 8 points. He did what I needed. I still cashed in my cash game lineup, so I went to 8-5, even with not having Waller. So I was kind of happy, anyways.
Yeah, I think Ferkser definitely kind of fucked me up a little bit because not in terms of my article, because for me, I specifically added a up or down, and I said I'm either going Waller or I'm going Ferkser. And I was just telling him this flat out that was the 2 options. And it was really saving money. And Waller did the only thing he could have done to make Ferkser not the right move, like in GPPs ultimately, is by smashing like that. Like smashing beyond other players at his price, let alone at his position. He's kind of maxed out that position. But yeah, the Ferkser news kind of screwed me up because I was really ready to go. I was going to find the money to play Waller in every team. I still played him in half my teams, but I was going to play him on every team. And then when the Ferkser thing opened up, then it's like, well, now I can reach this guy if I punt this position, and things got a little sketchy. But like you said, he put up 10 points at 25 on DraftKings. That was still a pretty good deal. So I'm with it. But shout out to you, Nation. The Listener League for Week 14 is currently in the description. If you're listening to this on audio, it's still there too. But on YouTube, you can find it. Do the dirty. It's free to get in. Winner gets $25 on each site. So go in there. Why not? It's free. Go do it. We only have 20 slots on FanDuel. You got to fill that one quick. DraftKings, I think we have up to 200. It's not my limitations, just the sites. Okay. Hit the like button. We're about to roll into Week 14, Joe, and it's a big one. And it's a wild one, man. We have a lot of really good spots. We're going to kick things off with a bang on this one, Joe. Right out the gate, Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs visiting Tua man. And I really built it up.
Tunga
Vailoa. I'd been practicing, and I thought I was going to nail it, and then I just choked under pressure. But the Miami Dolphins, 49.5 is our total. That is up 1 point from 48.5. The Chiefs are currently 7.5 point favorites on the road. Joey, talk to me about the Kansas City Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, I think Mahomes is 8,900. He's below 9K. Nothing wrong with playing him. I just think with other options and better matchups, I give a little bit of credit to the Miami defense. So I feel like Brian Flores, he comes from the Belichick tree. And I feel like they're going to be able to hold down this offense a little bit to where Mahomes is a GPP guy for me. The running game, we saw that, even if CEH is out, that like Bell just still's not going to like totally take control of this backfield. You're still going to get Darrell Williams in there. So they're not really on. I mean, the guys that you're looking at is obviously Tyreek Hill, which he's going to be kind of all over the place. They're just going to move him all over the place. He's a great play at 9K, but I think they're just, like I said, I'm giving a little bit of credit to the Miami D. Kelsey, it's pay up for tight end. He's the safest place on the board. He has, it's like, I think it's, it's like five games in a row. He has eight catches and almost 100 yards, over 100 yards on each one of those games and 3 touchdowns. I mean, he's one of the safest players in football, and it's tough because this week is such a good week. There's so many good players in great spots, so it's going to be really tough if you really, if you're thinking about it. Obviously, Kelsey is I think stands out for the one play in this game.
And real quick, shout out to Myron Kidd in the YouTube chat. Says it's Tuesday and I've already chopped up a fire lineup for the Millie. I love it, Myron. I love that energy. I love that energy. Going to the Chiefs, yes, Mahomes is an option. There's another quarterback that I plan on spending up for. Mahomes, if I had more team, sure. If I was doing more of an MME approach, which I often do, sure. It's funny because Miami has always been a slower team this year in pace, but if you notice against Cincinnati, Tua was struggling a little bit until they went no huddle, and then he kind of started getting into a groove. So I wonder if Miami speeds the pace up. If that happens, that's going to give the Chief players a little bit more, consideration into their projection. So yeah, I think I do think that in tournaments, Patrick Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, it's going to be tough for the outside guys. Not tough, but one of the matchups that aren't so cupcake, right? Like we've seen Tyreek Hill just absolutely destroy these terrible secondaries, and he's outstanding. His speed's outstanding. But we'll see what he does against a Miami team that's kind of been a little bit of a run funnel at times. They've had good exterior, coverage guys. And then if CEH is in, I think he's in the mix. And I'm saying this with the full expectation that I'm going to have to pay down somewhere at running back. I know that's not going to be a popular decision. We have some really good spend-up running backs that we'll get to. But I want to spend up for quarterback, I think, this week. And Mahomes is definitely on that list. If he's out, I will play Bell on DraftKings at 4-4. Because number one, I'm going to need the value. And number two, I think that this game script, it's hard for me to envision Miami leading at any point. So I think that if the Chiefs do get ahead in this one, I think they will actually rely on the run. Against Denver, they actually had to kind of press the gas to a degree because Denver was so competitive. So if that's the likely scenario, then yeah, the pass game is what I want. But if I think that the Chiefs are going to run away with this game, then I think I may take a shot on one of these running backs.
I like the Chiefs D.
Yeah, I don't mind it at all, man. I've not been all that impressed with what I've seen so far from the Miami offense. I don't mind it. What about on the Miami side?
Miami side, it really comes down to one player. It's Myles Gaskin. I think that's it. I mean, you could probably, Gesicki had a great week, so he's going to garner some attention. But, calm your jets on Gesicki. I think it's, he had he scored touchdowns in the last 2 games, but it's against the Jets and the Bengals, 2 of the worst teams in the NFL. So I would not. I feel like it's kind of like he's around just other tight ends that are just in better spots. So to me, it's Gaskin or nothing.
Yeah, I agree. The usage for Gaskin looks pretty good. Miami was banged up last week at running back, but even if they weren't, look at the cast. It's nothing. It's nothing anybody would want. So Gaskin at 5'6" definitely fits what I'm looking for. We have a solid total here. We expect. We know the Chiefs. That's one of the places they've been vulnerable is against the run. We saw Melvin Gordon running for over 100 yards. So absolutely. I agree with that. Not terribly interested in a ton else. Maybe some Devontae Parker. You get some narrative going, right? Like Miami was all pumped up, got into that fight, bonding. You know what I mean? But realistically, I think Gaskin is definitely my favorite from this game as well. Next up, we've got the Houston Texans, Chicago Bears. We've got a 45 total, down from 45.5. The Texans are currently 1.5 point favorites on the road. Joey, talk to me about Houston.
Houston, yeah. I kind of like Houston this week. There's a couple pieces I think you really got to look at. First piece is, Watson. He is 8K, and I think that he still gives you that pay-up option. He's on the road in a decent environment. I think that he could put up, exactly what we need. The Bears defense has not been as good as it has been lately. The running game, I'm not really going into. I feel like it's almost like Johnson and Johnson are just kind of canceling each other out right now. Not really into it. But besides Watson, I'm almost be willing to pair him with Brandon Cooks. I like him more than I like him last week. Let me read you something. Since week 9, these are what wide receivers ones have been doing against the Bears since week 9. A.J. Brown, 100 yards and a touchdown. Week 10, Justin Jefferson, 135 yards, and Thielen had 43 yards and 2 touchdowns. Devontae Adams, 6 for 61 and a touchdown. Marvin Jones last week, 8 receptions, 116 yards and a touchdown. Wide receiver ones have been taking the Bears to school the last 4 or 5 weeks. So I think if you're going to pair, I think that's great. I don't mind Kiki Kuti also. And then don't sleep on this other receiver. His name is Mr. Hansen. He actually played the most snaps, more than Kuti, more than Cooks. So you got guys that are, that are gonna fill in a role. He's 5,100. He's back to a practice squad player, but he's probably gonna bring him back up again. That's the way kind of weird things that they're doing this year with the NFL. So I like the passing game a lot in this game. Tight end, I'm not even going there. And then, I guess if you wanted to pay down the defense, the Houston defense is nothing special, but, we know Chicago can stumble over itself too. So Houston D is maybe too. But I actually like the Texans a little bit in this game.
Yeah, what I like the most about Cooks is he was obviously chalk last week and busted, and what I think people may even consider to be a better matchup or a better style game, right? That was a high total type game. This is a 45 total. So I could see people, at least more people than last week, kind of shy away from Cooks, who's also got an elevated price tag, at least on DraftKings, who's now 6-1. So for tournaments, that's always interesting. When people bail off that spot, even though it was a good spot, that's why they liked it the week before. They just kind of bail off of it, and then it ends up doing dirty. So, I could get behind that in tournaments. And, the tight ends are interesting here, too. I hate coming to these situations where there's more than one guy. But I get the feeling I'm going to want to punt tight end this week. And the Bears have been a real strong funnel to the tight end game, man. Second in DVP, second most fantasy points allowed to the tight end position. And Akins on DraftKings is only 2,900. So that could come into play. What about the Bears side?
Yeah, the Bears side, we haven't. Did they decide if Trubisky's starting again this week or not?
I'm under the assumption that he is.
I don't know.
I don't think I haven't heard anything official. I'm just.
Yeah, I think he's in a better situation this week to maybe have to throw a little more. It was really weird. They kind of got ahead and they just kind of sat on it and they didn't do much. So Trubisky played fine. He just didn't get the touchdown passes that we wanted. David Montgomery. 6,600. He's got another great matchup. He's got the volume. He's vanilla ice cream, but sometimes vanilla ice cream's good. You just put a little chocolate sauce on it. It's fine.
Man, I fucking love vanilla ice cream. I don't give a fuck. I don't know. I really don't care. I love vanilla ice cream. People talk about people who like vanilla ice cream are serial killers, all that shit. Fuck all that. I don't give a fuck. I like vanilla ice cream. Like I said, like you said, man, put some caramel on that bitch. You could put some sprinkles. There's a bunch of things you could put on it.
Push it up.
But shit. Mm-hmm. Anyway.
But yeah, Monty is a decent play. I think that Allen Robinson, don't be afraid to go back to there just because, like, especially if you're doing a game stack, like, that's who Trubisky's gonna have to go to, and especially if they get behind. That's why I even like it even more. So Allen Robinson, and then Cole Kmet seems to be like he's the flavor of the week at tight end, and he's the new thing for Mr. Trubisky. So I mean, he's 4,600 on FanDuel. If he does what he did last week, even without the touchdown, he's okay. Like, it's really cheap. So you got to kind of think about him, especially, if you're trying to get value in. And then that's it.
Tony A says MVP Mitch is starting. Tony A's always got pretty good intel, man. He's always coming through with the good knowledge. So, yeah, I think we're safe to assume Mitch is the guy. Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's A-Rob, Montgomery, if you have money to spend here, right? I agree with you on Montgomery. That's the thing about running back, man. We have some really good running backs on the spots on the slate. This is just one of them. Several at this price range. We got spend-ups that are really good, like Derrick Henry, who we'll talk about later. But there's, like, with that approach, like I feel like I'm not going to prioritize the running backs because I can find a running back at whatever tier I'm left with, So Montgomery's in that mix, man. Houston's been one of the worst teams against the run. And then, like, A-Rob, same situation, 6'8". I think a lot of people are going to try to go high-low to some degree, and he can kind of get overlooked. This is a great matchup for him, too. Houston's defense has not been good. And Cole Kmet, man, you said it. I got him on my radar because I'm going to need those cheap tight ends. And he's one of them, man. He's on that list. A lot of guys in that, like, 29 to 3,100 guys that I'm looking at this week. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Let's go on to the next game, Joey. We've got the Arizona Cardinals and the New York Giants. We have a 45 total. The Cardinals currently 2.5-point favorites on the road. A 45 total for a Cardinals game. Isn't that some shit? That's just mad respect to the Giants. Man. Talk dirty to me, Joe. Cardinals.
Okay, well, I mean, I think that if I was a betting man, I would probably get on the over because I heard that Daniel Jones might be back this week. So I think that would raise the point total a little bit if he came up and played.
I would think so.
Kyler Murray, there's something not right with him. He's just his shoulder's just not right. He's still doing okay, but it's totally affecting this team. Obviously D-Hop you can go to. He's just so they just price him right around the same prices with all the other good receivers, and he's just not. Did you see that picture that was going around Twitter lately? There's like his routes that he's run like the past 3 weeks or 4 weeks. It's all been on like one side of the field. Like he doesn't go anywhere else on the other side. He doesn't travel anywhere else, and it's just so weird. So like teams are like seeing it's very predictable. So I think Dan Arnold you'd be chasing. He caught 2 touchdowns last week, but he only had 2 catches. You just can't predict that. It's just not something you want. The running backs, Kenyon Drake is fine at 6,500, but there's just so many other running backs in better positions you want to go to. I don't really like much of this Arizona team this week.
Yeah, I don't love them a ton. I think that for my issue with Kyler, in the 7.2 price tag on DraftKings is definitely like eye-popping. My issue is, number one, I do think the Giants' defense is pretty good. Number two, Kyler Murray's upside, I think the biggest issue with his injury is he's not running as much. He can't be as aggressive because he's not willing to take a hit, or maybe he was told not to take a hit. But without the rushing, that's how Kyler got there all season. Like, he was like, his throwing shit wasn't nothing special. Yeah, he threw a Hail Mary a couple times. He had D-Hop early in the beginning, but it wasn't really, I'm not saying he can't throw. I think he's a great quarterback, and, as a Jet fan, I wish I had him. But my point is, fantasy upside-wise, what made him look like Lamar Jackson of last year was the part that made Lamar Jackson look like Lamar Jackson of last year, is he was running a lot. And so if he's not going to run a lot, that's going to cap his ceiling a little bit, especially in a matchup that I'm not crazy about. I think Kenyon Drake at 55, like you said, is kind of like vanilla, I know, blah. But the Giants have given up the 9th most fantasy points in the league to running backs. And I think that that's where you're better off attacking the Giants. They've been good. Guys like Bradbury and these guys, they've been pretty good. I have to admit, Bradbury looking like a pretty decent-ass fucking pickup for them. D-Hop at 7.6 is fine. Christian Kirk, that's a chase for me. I've been chasing this dude for too long. Every time I go to a Cardinals game, which is often, and if I'm not playing D-Hop, I try to play Kirk, and it just has not worked. It's not worked out more often than it has worked out. We'll say that. But I think Drake right now is the guy that I'm considering the most, and maybe that changes as the week goes on if Danny Jones is in, and we think this game is going to pace. And like we have Danny Jones in as of now in our projections. Like as of now, we have him as if he's in. So maybe something we'll circle back to come the Wise stream on Friday. What about the Giants side?
Yeah, I mean, back to Drake. Like on FanDuel, he's priced like $100 less than Montgomery. Right. I mean,
yeah, on
pick him, especially
on DraftKings, it's like $1,000 difference. So it's a site specific deal.
That makes the
site specific deal.
So the Giants, a lot depends on Daniel Jones, whether he's going to play or not, whether he's going to be healthy. The reports are that he rehabbed. It looked really good, like better than they expected, and he almost had a shot of playing last week. I mean, he was doubtful like up until the last minute. So I'm not saying play him, but it definitely helps the offense. Wayne Gallman, 6K. He refuses to move his price up. All he did was go for 135 yards last week. Just because he didn't get in the end zone, they didn't raise his price. Like the guy's pretty the last 6 weeks, he would be, if you played him every week in cash, he would not have killed you. He literally got you 2x every week in cash. So I like that. The receiving core is just too hard to pin down. The only guy I'm looking at is Evan Ingram at 5,700. He is, on the list of guys that, he's going to, I think if Jones is back, I think he can eat against Arizona. They're decent against tight end, but it's nothing like you would be scared about. And then I like the Giants defense a little bit too. They're playing really good. They held down Russ last week, so why not at home? The Giants D.
I hear you, man. If Danny Jones is in, I'll have interest. I mean, I think Jalen Hurts. We'll get to that game, but I think he's expected to be pretty popular. I think Danny Jones, if he did play, is an interesting pivot. I don't know if Jones would be off and running, like literally running, which is what kind of helped him pop before he got hurt. But either way, I mean, Darius Slayton at 4,200 would be very much in play. I would assume that Sterling Shepard would draw some Patrick Peterson. I'm not even sure. You could argue it's a good spot for Tate too. Slot receivers have done really well against Arizona, but the upside that you could get from Slayton, who's 4,200 on DraftKings, is pretty big. So and like you said, if Jones is in, I think they'd be more inclined to throw, and if Jones is out, then I think Gallman would be more interesting as well. I'm with that. Let's go on to the Minnesota Vikings, Tampa Bay Bucks. We've got a 51.5 total, down from 52.5. We've got the Bucks currently as 6.5 point favorites at home. Start off with Dalvin Cook and company.
Yeah, this might be the week to fade Dalvin Cook or put him into a GPP lineup because the Bucks have not allowed a 100-yard rusher all year. So it's like they're averaging like 59 yards a game. But I just don't, obviously he could get there in catches and stuff like that. But at 10-2 and the other running backs sort of like in his range that we'll talk about, like I'm fading Cook this week. I think that we have the Buccaneers coming off of a bye, which might spell a little bit of tough. Vikings are going on the road. Cousins, I'm not really into. The receivers, Thielen and Jefferson, I think that you can consider every week. I just feel like that the Bucks defense with a week off, one of their corners is off the concussion list now. So that helps their secondary. And I just feel like this is an offense that you would only want to play in like a game stack and something, which I don't mind this game if you wanted to go there. But I like the other side a little bit better.
Yeah, I agree with you for the most part. I do think that the Vikings are kind of a stack it or leave it type team for me. Dalvin Cook in tournaments, sure, you get him at lower ownership. The matchup is really brutal, like you mentioned. Vikings defense also not good. So there's a good chance they trail in this game. Jefferson and Thielen would both have the ideal matchups, but their prices are up to a point where it's not cheap, and you are taking a chance against a defense who's coming off a bye and has been good at points this year. It's going to come down to we know with Cousins. When Cousins does throw, he throws down the field. I personally prefer Cousins at home, like I think you do to you do too, Joe.
Mhm.
So yeah, I'm fine with the receivers. Either one of them. I think the tight ends could be interesting if Irv Smith is out and Rudolph is another $2,900 tight end. I'll have to keep an eye on. But yeah, Jefferson, Thielen. That's pretty much it. What about the Buck side?
Yeah, the Buck side is, I feel like it's Tom Brady, and you could almost like I'd almost like feel like if you were playing him, you'd almost play him naked just because you don't know who he's going to go to. You could pick Evans, but it might go to Godwin and AB, and he or Gronk. I feel like if I was like pairing him with maybe with anyone, might be Gronk. Because that he might get a touchdown or something like that. That's the one thing about the Bucks is that you kind of don't really know where the ball's going all the time. So unless you want to play Brady, that's fine. I think that James Robinson had a decent day, and you think that Rojo is going to get all the carries. I just feel like if we were watching the Bucks before, they just looked like a team that was just tired. I mean, they were one of the last teams with a bye. They really had no COVID issues, so it's like they're probably just needed a bye and they needed to rest up for a week. I like their defense. Getting sacks. Cousins, we know, could throw pick sixes. He does that quite often. And this defense plays better at home. So this game, I feel like it might be a little fool's. Like people might want to stack it, but I'm not feeling it right now or where I would want to go, even if I did stack it. So I like the defense. That's about it.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I agree with what you said about the bye part. I think Tampa Bay needed the bye. I expect they're nice and rested. The Vikings defense has been terrible all year. And I mean, we saw last week with Jacksonville. The defense is just not good. So I do think Brady's going to slice them up. There is potential for the running backs to kind of come in here and get some opportunities if Tampa can't really keep up. But I think that on DraftKings, I think you try to play at least one of the receivers. And the reason is because they're all priced a little bit lower on DraftKings. So if they were to do well, if Brady does do well, and one of these guys do, like, you don't necessarily need a 40 from to smash, right? Like the Russell Wilson, DK Metcalf is, yeah, he's freaking 8'4". You almost need him to go for 40 at this point. Whereas with Evans at 6'6" on DraftKings, Godwin at 6'3", Brown at 5'5", if they went for like 25, you're sitting pretty with that. 23 for Antonio Brown, you're sitting pretty with that. So on DraftKings, I'd probably find a way to force at least two of those receivers in, or substitute one of them out for Gronk, or maybe play all three if you think it's going to really go off. But yeah, I think you're right with Brady. I think he's interesting, and I think so are his receivers. My thing is, I've noticed that whenever Brady does well, Mike Evans scores a touchdown. So he's always my first primary go-to. I agree with you though. Like, I like to do triple stacks in tournaments, and it's like, where do you go from there? That one's tricky. Let's go to the.
Yeah, I mean, one last thing. I mean, the receivers on FanDuel, they're priced.
Yeah.
I guess you'd be at 6,500, but 74 and 73 for Godwin and Evans.
You're taking a big risk.
On that part,
because you could just as easily go to the other. At that point, on FanDuel for a little bit more, you can get Jefferson, Thielen, where it's those two guys. Like, the targets are concentrated. So exactly on DraftKings, we're talking about Jefferson 7'4", Thielen 7. Evans 6'6", Godwin 6'3", Brown 5'5". So there's a significant price difference on each side. So I think that's a really good point. Another example of the differences of the two sites. Next up, Joe, we have the Tennessee Titans. We have the Jacksonville Jaguars. We have a 52.5 total. Tennessee currently 7.5 point favorites on the road. Talk to me about Tennessee.
Yeah, Tennessee coming off of a game where, our boy Fritzy literally I think he was passed out drunk by about the second half of that game. It's funny, like when you go on the Slack chat, the range of emotions of some of the guys on the Slack chat, it's like the first quarter and tilting is like being typed like a million times and stuff. And like everybody's so upset and, it usually has to do with something wrong with Henry. But this week, Henry's going up against Jacksonville, a team that literally he's made his bitch over the course of his career. We saw what Dalvin Cook has done against them. We see what they're basically the worst defense in the league. He's priced a little bit lower at 9.6. So it's like a little bit less than Cook and stuff like that. So I definitely like him. I think he's going to be one of the parts of the offense. However, we saw Mike Glennon be very competent with this offense with the Jags against um, the Vikings last week, and I feel like the same kind of thing is going to happen. Where I kind of like Tannehill and AJ Brown and Corey Davis. I kind of like the passing game a little bit too. Like I feel like they're going to have to pass a little more, kind of like what the Vikings did last week, so I feel like those four guys are in play. At tight end, we got to see what Jonnu Smith is doing. He might come back. I'm not sure. Ferkster's at 5,100. They priced them up now, so it's kind of like, with the other tight end we already talked about at 4,600, we're just going to go there. But I really like AJ Brown had a terrible game last week. He fumbled. He had one of the worst games of anybody in the NFL last week. So I feel like he's going to try and come back with a vengeance. Corey Davis, I feel like you're chasing if you go with Corey Davis, like all in. If you want to have him a little bit, I'm cool with it. But we've seen Corey Davis have like games like that, and then he has 0 the next week. Like you can't really understand why. But we know that this Jags defense is terrible. So Henry, Tannehill, Brown, and Davis, I like them all for sure.
Yeah, I think Tannehill obviously is certainly in play, but I do think this week I find Henry not like it's hard to see Henry not being successful. On DraftKings, you're getting a pretty good price at 887 when you consider a ceiling. It's just a massive fucking ceiling. I kind of like the idea right now of Henry and Brown just kind of plucking those two and not even fucking with the quarterbacks. Not that you can't. You certainly can with Tannehill, but maybe I could find that elsewhere. Maybe I find somebody that gives me a better ceiling. This way, Brown and Henry kind of ceiling together, and maybe Tannehill's kind of left out a little bit. He does well, but doesn't hit his ceiling, maybe. But yeah, Henry looks like he's in a phenomenal spot. He's one of the running backs we were talking about that people are going to want to spend up for, and I understand it completely. And A.J. Brown, like you said, man, looking for a bounce-back game. This is as good as it gets. I mean, this defense is horrendous. We know that even though Jacksonville has always been rated as a slower-paced team, we know that the Titans don't need a ton of opportunities. They're one of the most efficient teams in the game outside of last week, where they just had a bad day. But yeah, I like Brown and Henry for sure. What about the Jacksonville side, Joe?
Jacksonville side is pretty much James Robinson. I mean, he's the only guy that you can really, really rely on. He's been, he's getting 18 to 20 to 25 carries a week. He's getting a couple looks, targets. They're going to be playing from behind. I don't mind it. He's 8K. I think that like people just look at him and they kind of cross him off just because there's other running backs in that same area, which I totally get. Wide receivers is DJ Chark. For sure. And his price isn't that bad either. And then tight end Tyler Eifert got six targets last week, 45 yards. So, I mean, if he falls in the end zone, he's fine. Everybody loves him. So, Eifert at 4,700 isn't bad either, but that's it.
Yeah, we saw what Jacksonville did against a bad defense in Minnesota. Tennessee's defense, you could argue, just as bad. So, I don't love anyone when I look at this, but if I were to build a team with A.J. Brown and Henry, I would feel like I should probably bring it back with someone. And I think James Robinson, like you said, if I had the money, would be the leading candidate. But I think DJ Chark would be someone I'd be willing to settle for at a cheaper price. Yeah, he did have 7 targets last week. I know he kind of sucked, and I saw a bunch of people played him. And he didn't do all that well, but he did get 7 targets. So you got to think if we see more efficiency here, where Jacksonville is actually at home, and we have another soft matchup, maybe Glennon can work on those kinks a little bit. But yeah, I'm with you. After that, it's just too many mouths to feed. LaVisca, Keelan Cole, it's none of that. It's either Robinson or Chark. But and I don't mind the tight end play either. Cheap tight end, like it, Joe. Cheap tight end. Let's go. D Millie's in the chat, Joe. You know what D Millie said? He said, hello, I'm D Millie. Tilting is what I does. that we know, yes. D Millie. Yes, sir. We know. Yeah. We know. So we love you for it, though. Keep them videos coming, too. Dallas Cowboys, Cincinnati Bengals. We have a 43.5 total. The Cowboys are currently 3.5-point favorites on the road. Andy Dalton revenge, Joe?
It's what it is, right? I mean, no, not for me enough to go there, but I don't mind Zeke. He had 18 carries tonight, 77 yards. I think he's in a great spot. Wide receivers, Cooper, Lamb, Gallup is fine. I just you don't know. Like it seems like they all don't get the volume just isn't there. It doesn't seem to be there. I like Dalton Schultz too, 5,100. He ain't bad. But I mean, this is just this is a game that is just kind of like forgettable in so many ways. But I feel like there's a little bit of bits and pieces that you could take from. I don't mind Zeke at all. I think his price at 7,700 is good in the matchup that he's going to be in. But that's about it.
Yeah, when I look at this, I think that I expect Dallas to be successful offensively. Maybe I should be more interested in the pass game, like CeeDee Lamb at 4,800. Dalton really has liked to throw to CeeDee Lamb. But the thing with Dallas is they're constantly trailing. What if they actually play from ahead in this game? Like, do we see Zeke finally eat? And at 6'6", like I'd mentioned, there's some builds where I couldn't reach Henry. I couldn't reach those guys because I was spending up at receiver or quarterback. A guy like Zeke, if I can just manage to reach a guy like him, I think we still have some pretty solid upside at that price. And the game script could finally favor him for once instead of him constantly playing from behind. But I do think the Cowboys' offense is interesting. I don't actually hate Dalton. It's just I would only want to play Dalton in a scenario where I was confident the Bengals would be able to move the ball on their end. And I'm not all that confident in that. Even though it's Dallas, I just haven't been impressed with what I've seen. Then again, Brandon Allen did just play the Dolphins. Not exactly an easy cupcake matchup. What about the Bengals side?
Yeah, I mean, another thing is that this game is between the Bengals, who are 2-9-1, and the Cowboys that are 3-9.
See,
so the loser of this game gets a better draft choice.
True.
So it might be like, who wants to lose this game, the most? You want to take a running back, for the Bengals, because you can just run and run and run all day against Dallas. So, Gio Bernard, I think if Mixon is out again, I think Gio becomes a pretty good value play, even though he hasn't done shit in the last 4 weeks. He's faced terrible defenses. Finally facing a decent, an easy defense that he can actually do something with. Now, Mixon, they already priced him up to 7,200. So if he plays, he's just out for me because you don't know what that volume is going to be. And then at receiver, it's just so hard to know who's going to do what. You just kind of cross them off. That's it.
Yeah, I think I know that P. Ryan or whatever has been taking some snaps away, but I don't necessarily hate Gio, right? We know Dallas is not very good against the run. Baltimore ran all over them. They've given up the 5th most fantasy points opposing running backs. I do think that I prefer to attack Dallas' secondary with Boyd, Higgins, and Green. I just don't have a ton of confidence in some of the other guys. So I think that Gio at 5K would probably be the first place I would look. Maybe I'm considering floor more than ceiling that way. But it is Dallas, so you feel like there's something you want here, right? These are two of the worst defenses in the game. The problem is the offenses in them aren't so great. Kind of an issue. Next up, Joe, we've got the Denver Broncos, the Carolina Panthers. We have a 47 total. Panthers currently 3.5-point favorites, Joe, and they're expecting Christian McCaffrey back, I believe. But first, you're going to have to talk about Denver.
Do I have to? Believe it or not, I think the one player that stands out from this game is from this side is Melvin Gordon. He had 131 yards last week. It seemed like they really gave him the ball. Lindsey is just kind of falling off. At 6,100, he makes a good play, a good pivot off of some of the other plays that are around that area that I don't mind. Carolina is you can run on them, and they have like 8 guys that went on the COVID list, so they might not. They're going to be shorthanded coming off of a bye, believe it or not. So I like Melvin Gordon. Receivers, Tim Patrick seems to do something. Um, Tight end Fant seems to be the favorite target for Locke. But Drew Lock is just not dependable. He's had a couple weeks where he was okay, but you don't need any of that. It's Melvin Gordon or nothing.
Yeah, I agree. I think Jerry Jeudy and these guys are fine, but every time I play Carolina, the first place I'm looking is the run game. And I think that Denver was successful doing that in their last game, and they're going to try to lean on that again this week. And yeah, I like Melvin Gordon. I don't hate Lindsey. I mean, obviously, Gordon is the one getting the majority of the stuff. But yeah, I like Gordon as a primary play, and maybe Lindsey has a little bit of a hedge. But that's just a lot of confidence, in attacking Carolina's run D. So I'm with it. Let's go to the other side, Joe. What about Carolina?
Yeah, the other side, you have to kind of assume that if McCaffrey is back, that he's ready to roll. Like, he was hurt a couple weeks ago, like a month ago, and they held him out and they brought him back, and we were like, well, they're going to split carries with Davis or whatever. And then he went out there and had 18 carries and 10 targets and, got put up 32 points. So I feel like if Christian McCaffrey is active and we hear that the training wheel's off or whatever, even we would want to play him in this matchup against Denver. Nothing with the quarterbacks with Bridgewater. The receiver that you want this week is Robbie Anderson, because we have Curtis Samuel and DJ Moore both on the COVID list. Couple that with AJ Abouye, who's going to get suspended for the rest of the season for PEDs, as well as the other corner for the Broncos is out also. So it's Robbie Anderson at the wide receiver position. That's pretty much. Oh, also the Carolina D too. I know that we're talking about Gordon, but Carolina D hasn't been too bad, and we know that Locke is like good for two sacks or 2 picks a game. So I don't mind the Carolina D at all.
Yeah, Carolina's defense, as I was saying, I'll attack them with the run, no problem. But against the pass, they've been at least lately they've been decent. Not really interested in Bridgewater. McCaffrey is obviously a big deal, right? If he's in there as one more guy you have to consider, especially on DraftKings, a PPR site. Do you think that being in his first game, he had such a big workload against the Chiefs, and obviously ended up getting hurt and missing more time? Do you think that they're a little more cautious? And because they said they were going to play Davis more, they really didn't, and then they kind of fucked them. Do you think that, or here's the other thing? Do you think that? Do you think Denver game plans to just solely stop him in any type of scenario?
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing: is that Carolina really has no chance for the playoffs.
Right.
So
what's the point?
I mean, I guess if they were to run off their next 4, they would be 8-8 and might. But if they get behind, which they won't, I feel like the last game was also they were playing KC.
Yeah,
so they
it was
were
like
in
a
the
hyped
game.
up game.
You know what I mean? They took KC. Yeah, so like this is Denver. I just don't know. Like, I feel like they might think that they can win this game without having to put all the load on McCaffrey. But we've seen this year when running backs come back, like I feel like teams are waiting for them to really, really be healthy before they bring him back. So they really kept him out. They were thinking he might play going into the bye. He didn't. He had another 2 weeks off. So he's at least a GPP option right now.
Yeah, I agree. And I agree with you on Robbie Anderson. I think we see elevated targets, and also the PED suspension for Bouye probably going to make an impact. So yeah, there's definitely at least some plays to consider here. Moving on, we've got the Indianapolis Colts, Las Vegas Raiders. We have a 51.5 total. Colts currently 2.5 point favorites on the road. Talk to me about your boy Phil.
Yeah, so we finally moved into the afternoon games. There's 6 games this week. Um, yeah, I mean, this is like Philip Rivers going up against the Raiders again, which is, the Raiders are, he knows them very well. I don't think like he's, on my list to, a cash game or 7K. He'd really have to do well, but I mean, he's not going to kill you either, He just really doesn't have much upside. The running backs, Jonathan Taylor, you have to take a look at. We saw Ty Johnson, your boy, not even the Frenchman, run up all over the the Raiders last week. So I feel like Jonathan Taylor was given the reins last week. I don't mind that at all. We got to give him more touches. Give him more touches, he's going to produce. Like it just. To me, you got to give him in rhythm and stuff like that. Even though he only had 13 carries last week, which is weird. T.Y. Hilton showed the pulse. You just don't know which one he's going to go to. And then the tight ends, they like throwing to him, but no, Burton did shit last week. So I also feel like, this is a spot where, if you wanted to pay up a defense, be contrarian, like the Raiders are coming off of a good win against the Jets, but don't forget 2 weeks ago they put up 6 points against the Falcons. So we know the Raiders can crumble if things don't go their way. So the Colts have a good defense. So I don't mind them too if you're paying up.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised by the total in this one. It's one of the higher ones on the slate at 51.5. I would think my first instinct is to like the running game. I don't like the three-headed machine, but I think Taylor is going to get double-digit carries as long as they're within reach, right, of winning, which they're favored. So he would be my first stop. Hilton. So Hilton did get a spike in targets last week, not for nothing, but Hilton always destroys Houston. He's got like a ridiculous thing. Because like for a while he was really only good at home. And then Houston also has like a turf, similar type situation. He's always just destroyed them, and a lot of it has to do because how bad their secondary's been. But I'm a little nervous now to buy in and spend up. The problem is I'm not really crazy about anyone here. I respect the pricing in this game. I think there's some really good prices for stacks and all that, but I'm just concerned about ceiling. And I think I would stick with the running backs at this point and maybe go with Burton, even though last week the production was down. What about the Raiders side?
Yeah, the Raiders side, Carr, I feel like if you want to go back there, you're fine, but he's not a cash game quarterback. So if he becomes popular, don't go there. He always screws up. Running backs, Josh Jacobs, I don't think is going to be playing again this week. They just signed off the street Spencer Ware, so that shows you how we were right on the Devontae Booker fade. I feel like that was one thing that we really got right. None of us were on that. I think that the Raiders' offense gets a really dose of reality against Indy this week, and I'm not going to go there at all anywhere. I mean, yeah, not even Waller. I don't even think if I'm going to pay up that much, I'm just going to go up to Kelsey at that point.
I agree. I'm not really into Waller. The Colts have.
You're totally chasing if you play Waller. Completely.
Agreed. The Colts have given up the least amount of fantasy points in the league to tight ends. The Colts defense has been pretty good, especially from a fantasy perspective. So I'm not really into it either. I guess maybe like a Renfro for value out of the slot. But yeah, I'm with you on the Colts D, man. I'm not really maybe it's like a sell high situation on the Raiders if because I'm even looking at it's early. It's only Tuesday night, Wednesday morning, whatever you want to call it, but. I'm seeing even the betting percentages. I would have thought people would be all over the Colts at -2.5, and I'm seeing it more split, which is kind of mind-boggling to me. But I don't know. Maybe I'm the jackass. Maybe. Let's go on to the next game, if I can find it. Okay, here we go. My New York Jets, my beloved New York Jets, keeping the streak alive. Boom. Visiting the Russell Wilson-led Seattle Seahawks. Russ has been trying to cook, but he has not been cooking very well. We have a 47 total. That's right. Seahawks currently 13.5 point favorites at home. Talk to me about the Jets, who I really thought it was it, man. I was like, man, now we're going to be competing with Jacksonville all year for that seed. And Greg Williams just kind of blessed us, man. And did one last thing on his way out, man. He went out in a blaze of glory. So, not a fan of his per se, but we'll give him a shout out for getting the job done and getting the Jets to where they need to be. And that is winless. Talk to me about the New York Jets.
The New York Jets, I think it's basically Jamison Crowder is like the main play you want to look for. Obviously, Mims and Perryman are somebody that you can look at and be fine in GPP, or if you're stacking this game, which I feel like some people might do. But it's not much. But I like Crowder a lot. We saw, Darnold go back to him more often than not last week. So, and Ty Johnson, I think, is fine, but Josh Adams is going to be there, and I think other running backs will just chip in to where it won't be as much. And Seattle's not too bad on the ground, anyways.
Yeah. We'll check the status of Frank Gore. If Gore is in at 4K, like I couldn't do it this week because we have too many good running backs. I can't just settle for a 4K guy for the sake of doing it. But if Gore was out, I don't mind the Ty Johnson deal because I do think that they'd be more. I think he's a little bit more athletic at this point in his career. So I guess if that's the case, maybe I should consider Gore. I don't even think Gore is going to play. I don't know why he would at this point in his career. But yeah, so that's a wait and see. I'm more interested in the value receivers. Crowder is nice if I could afford him, but realistically, I'm probably looking more at Mims and Perryman. I think I prefer Mims. I think most people would. It's only a $200 difference on DraftKings. But yeah, not a ton that I love here, right? We have too many guys at everybody's price that are too competitive. But I'll keep an eye on the running back situation. It is interesting that Gallman did rush. It wasn't just him, Morris too. Like they just ran the ball really well. However, I will say this: Jamal Adams' revenge spot. He definitely wants to lay some licks in against the Jets. There's no doubt he's going to want to make a statement, and his strength is a run stopper. So I'll throw that out there. Joe, what about the Seattle side?
Yeah, Seattle side, you got Russ Wilson at 9K going up against the Jets. I feel like Seattle is like due for like just a huge blow-up game because they're frustrated. They haven't been doing shit last 4 weeks. They're starting to go back in the standings. They just lost to the Giants. Now they got the Jets coming in here. Russ being 9K, I'm with it, but you got to make sure that they're going to be passing the whole game. And the reason why Carr did so well was because the Jets were like ahead a lot of that game. That's so do we feel like Seattle's going to like the Jets are going to, it's going to be a back and forth type of game? I mean, the way that Seattle's been playing the last few weeks, you would think that maybe the Jets will hang in there, but I could also see Seattle getting up on top and just running the ball all the second half too. So it's kind of weird. Like at 9K, I don't know if I can go there. I kind of like Rodgers better at the same price, to be honest with you. So, running back, Carson is fine. Receivers, you got DK Metcalf against that secondary. I mean, come on, it's just ridiculous. He's going to be very popular. He's one of the receivers that are in the best spots of the week. I think you gotta have one of this week of either Devontae Adams, DK Metcalf, or Keenan Allen. Those are like one of those three. I think you have to have. They're in just such great spots. So I like that. Tyler Lockett, obviously, you know what he can do. His ceiling, it's so amazing how they keep pricing him up, and he hasn't done shit since that 45-point game. I mean, he had one game where he went 17 points. But he's not like a 7,900 receiver right now. So it's like you'd only play him in a stack or in a GBP setting. You're not playing him in cash. So it's like I'm cool with it. And then obviously I think the defense on FanDuel, they priced them up to 5K. I'm not seeing the Jets offense is actually like competent, sort of, lately, against the Raiders. So I feel like the Seahawks defense, that they can be beaten through the air. So at 5K, I feel like that's just fool's gold to be paying up that like that.
So I'm with you in the cash conversation. I don't really think outside of Metcalf, I don't think there's a ton here for cash. But in tournaments, I love this. I love this side. I love this stack. Russell Wilson, Metcalf for sure. Give me Tyler Lockett. I think Onslaught is on the table because while I do think there's a good chance Seattle just destroys the Jets, I think Seattle kind of needs one of those games. And it's purely just a hunch, right? Maybe they go conservative and just run. But like you said, man, like it feels like they kind of need a get-right spot, and there's no better get-right spot in this league than the New York Jets. Now, Greg Williams was recently fired. We're not sure how that's going to affect the schemes or what they do. Maybe they're going to be a little worse against the run to be better against the pass. And we see Carson go out and do something. I don't know. But I tend to think that it'll be something similar to what Williams was doing. Whoever's taking over, obviously, is not going to want to rock the boat too much at this point in the season, I wouldn't think. And I think it comes down to talent. And their secondary is shit because they got no talent in their secondary. So a lot of rookies playing this shit. So, yeah, in tournaments, I love Russ. And I think that's what it's going to be contrarian to spend up at quarterback, specifically because I think people are going to want Metcalf, yeah, but they're also going to want like Derrick Henry or Christian McCaffrey. So I think people are going to want to spend up that money, and they're not going to want to spend it at quarterback. So I think it could be one way to get different with your builds. But right, I will definitely have a Russell Wilson stack, at least one, if not more, with Metcalf, Lockett, even the tight ends. I'll work in Hollister. Maybe I'll even play him with Carson. I don't know. But I want Seattle every which way, for sure. Next up, Washington football team. San Francisco 49ers, we have a 43.5 total. The Niners are the Niners are favored by 3.5 currently. We're going to talk about the Washington football team first. Is this Alex Smith revenge, Joe?
It is. It's a revenge game.
Oh, everywhere.
Before I start, can anybody guess where my background is? Can anybody guess where the background is today? Where is Patio Joe today? Let's see if anybody can guess where it is. Anyways, let's get back to this game where we got Washington football team coming off a great win against the one-loss Pittsburgh Steelers. And we're going up against, in San Francisco, who's also coming off of a short week, who is coming off of a loss, though, too. So Washington, no Antonio Gibson. He's got turf toe. I would not consider him playing. J.D. McKissick becomes a really, really attractive option on DK. I'm pretty sure. I bet you they didn't price him up. CK, is that true? They probably didn't.
He's at 49.
Okay, he's still pretty. I mean, on a PPR side, I think that's great. I think you can look at the games that Gibson hasn't been in there or hasn't played much. McKissick is really involved, so it's going to be him and Barber. Alex Smith, you don't want receivers. I mean, McLaren does he feel like he just gets swallowed up? I guess the play would be like Logan Thomas. He seemed to break out, but San Francisco's pretty good against the tight end. This is a very slow plotting game, I think, and both teams coming off a short week. Washington's traveling again to Arizona, so West Coast, that they were playing in Arizona again. So I don't really like much of Washington this week.
Yeah, I agree. McKissick, he's probably my favorite play from the game, and I think I actually think he is in a really good spot. The Niners haven't really faced a ton of teams that utilize the running back out of the backfield. They're very good against the run, but they have like when they played Kamara, for instance, and obviously this is Alvin Kamara. But I mean, before you laugh, we're looking for the volume, not the efficiency. So I'm not saying McKissick is anywhere near the talent level of Kamara. But it's comparable the amount of like pass game work that we've seen running backs get, and they use McKissick just like a wide receiver, and he's getting double-digit targets in games he's getting to play. I do think Washington trails in this game, and even if they don't, I don't think they're going to be successful running the ball, number one, because the matchup sucks, number two, because they're missing Gibson. So I like McKissick a lot on DraftKings, and I think he's going to get a lot of pass game work. He's 4,900. I think that's too low for the situation he is in. And the reason I brought up Kamara earlier is while Alvin Kamara only had eight carries for 15 yards. He did get 2 touchdowns, but while he only had 8 carries for 15 yards, he did have 7 receptions for 83 yards and a touchdown. So we're looking at a guy that's probably going to get, 15 targets at running back on DraftKings. If he catches half of those, you're already like more than halfway there. So yeah, I like the McKissick call. Don't love a ton else. What about San Francisco?
San Francisco, they're another very tough team to figure out. You're really only um, considering Debo or Ayuk. I prefer Debo, but Ayuk is just as produces just as much, so I'm good with that. I'm pretty much off the Niners completely. Like it's maybe Mostert, but you just don't know if it's going to be a Jeffrey Wilson week, and maybe Jordan Reed. But I think this is what's the total in this game?
43.5, I think.
Yeah, I could see why it's so low. So, yeah, this game is pretty much one of the cross-off games this week. I'm not going to have much of it at all.
Yeah, I think the Niners' defense is heavily in play. Only problem is when you take a defense against Alex Smith is you have to wonder about ceiling, right? Smith is not a big risk taker. He doesn't really turn the ball over a ton. Aside from that, it's a little murky. I'm not really into the Alex Smith revenge, but I kind of can buy into the Jordan Reed revenge on the other side, Joe. So 3,500 on DraftKings, I could see it. He did get a touchdown last week, and not to mention that has been one of the biggest weaknesses for the Washington defense is the tight end position, evident by who did it? Nah, I don't know. I don't know. Either way, 12th most fantasy points allowed to opposing tight ends, 30th to receivers, 27th to running backs, 24th to quarterbacks. This defense has been good, but the tight end they've given it up a little bit. So just another punt tight end throw in the mix. I don't love a ton from the Niners either. McKissick, my favorite play from the game as of now. And Joe, shout out to number one Paulie for getting it right first, right? Your background, right? Paulie hit it first with the Pine Barrens, and then WW Fresh, who I don't know, I don't ever really see him pop into the chat much. I mean, I don't see him say something. He hopped in, said, "Awesome background from Sopranos, Pine Barrens, Paulie's car that the Russians stole."
That's right.
Correct. Sopranos. So you told me it was Jersey. You didn't tell me it was Sopranos, Joe.
Did you ever watch Sopranos?
I did, but I was kind of like, I was a little younger, and I was in between living overseas. I was a military brat, so I lived in Germany for X amount of years, and you don't get the same channels. Shit happens. I've watched it like as an adult, but I haven't watched all the episodes yet. No.
Yeah, you should. Anybody, if you're on YouTube, guys, obviously on iTunes and stuff, there is a great podcast called Talking Sopranos that you have Michael Imperioli, who played Christopher Moltisanti, and Steve Sciarippa, who played Bobby Bacala. They basically go episode by episode, and they talk about it, and they go behind the scenes. They have guests on and stuff. Talking Sopranos, it's awesome if you're a Sopranos fan, 100%. Paulie, you're right. He's some kind of interior decorator. Really? His apartment looked like shit. Yes. Pine Barrens. That episode is considered to be one of the top episodes in television history. I'll put that episode up against any other show at any time. It's a great. The show itself is great, but that episode in particular called Pine Barrens, which was directed by Steve Buscemi. So didn't know if you knew that.
Some trivia. I love it, man. I love it. Some trivia action from Patio Joe. Not just DFS, ladies and gentlemen. You get it all with the Wise Take Nation. Next up, Joe. Atlanta Falcons, your Los Angeles Chargers. We have a 49.5 total. The Falcons currently 2.5-point favorites on the road. The ultimate disrespect, man. You're dogs to the Falcons, and you're at home. Talk to me about the Dirty Birds.
I feel like this game is flash draft season for Paulie. I mean, this is like fourth quarter. Any team could be up, and you don't know what's going to happen because both defenses will give up a shit ton. I mean, the Chargers defense has given up over 27 points in like the last 2-3 months. So it's like, how could you not like Atlanta and Matt Ryan? And I feel like they're going to come in here and get up on a big lead, and the Chargers are going to come back to go ahead, only for Atlanta to maybe win it. I mean, this could be fireworks, honestly. But you just don't know if the Chargers have given up. Like Joey Bosa was quoted saying, "Well, I'm going to still play. I don't know about everybody else." So hopefully they haven't given up. Anthony Lynn is a lame duck coach. But Atlanta, Matt Ryan is a GBP quarterback. I think, like I said, this defense has been giving up points beyond points beyond points every week. No Derwin James is just killing them. The running game, I don't really care about Gurley or Hill. You just don't want to go there. The receivers, Ridley and Julio. Ridley's price is down a little bit. Julio is 7,600. I like both of them. I think they're both gonna eat. Uh, that's about it. I don't really care about the tight end Hurst. That doesn't really matter. That's it. But it's basically, Ridley, Julio, Ryan.
I don't mind Ryan, Ridley, or Julio, but I think I have more interest in Todd Gurley just a little bit. Gurley came back from injury last week, but Coach Raheem Morris had kind of said that it was more of a situational role, like a situational role. So I think they were concerned about him being 100% healthy, and they kind of just played him as needed. And I think all the running backs got like 8 carries apiece. He did say, however, and take this for what it's worth, but he did say that he expects him to have a larger role this Sunday against the Chargers. The Chargers have given up the 12th most fantasy points to opposing running backs. Gurley's only 4,800. We know he can be involved in the pass game at times, and we know that we've seen him get up to 18 carries in a game. So at 4,800, I am kind of interested in Gurley, and I think he'll be extremely low owned. On FanDuel, I would have the hesitation at 6,100 for sure, but on DraftKings at 4,800, I'm kind of interested there at low ownership. Hayden Hurst, another tight end to consider, 3,700. I know everybody's healthy, but aside from that, like you said, man, the Matt Ryan, Ridley Jones is fine. And the benefit of that is Ryan is cheap on DraftKings, so he allows you to kind of comfortably afford those guys. But I think that Gurley is from a contrarian approach, an interesting option. What about your Chargers, Joe?
Yeah, the Chargers, I feel like Justin Herbert is got a great matchup. We got a terrible secondary. They're going to have more time to throw this week. It's not Bill Belichick. They were embarrassed, 45-0. I mean, one thing I could say about my team, like they lose and they lose in great ways, but like the reason why they lose because they usually they blow a lead at the end and they're really close, but they usually never get blown out like that. So they got a little embarrassed. They need to have a little pride. Austin Eckler, I don't think is a cash option, but I feel like catching balls out of the backfield in an up-tempo game and stuff like that, I don't mind him. But the play is Keenan Allen this week. He's going to have one of the best matchups of the week against him, and I think it's McKenzie or Terrell, one of those corners. At 8,500, like I said, you're gonna have to choose between him, Adams, or Metcalf. I think they all could compete for being wide receiver one in the matchups that they have. I love Keenan Allen this week. I also like Hunter Henry. We know that Atlanta is one of the worst against tight ends, so it's pretty much Allen and Henry with Herbert and Eckler being third and fourth. A good game to stack, though.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely a stackable game. Bounce back spot for Herbert. Allen's price is pretty low, I think, compared to what it's gotten to and compared to his ceiling. So I like Keenan Allen as well. I really like Eckler a ton. He's even cheaper. I expect him to continue to get this pass game usage. Atlanta's been good against the run, but that's not really what we're looking for from Eckler anyway. We're looking for the pass game work, and I don't think that's going anywhere. Matter of fact, I'm inclined, like why Mike Williams is appealing at a cheap price, Hunter Henry in play, I would be inclined to do a Herbert, Eckler, Allen stack as of now, as like a little triple stack action. But Eckler for sure stands out on a slate that's loaded with running backs. He's another one you have to consider, especially in PPR sites. But Keenan Allen, receiver looking pretty deep, man. Like running back is too, like all throughout. Receivers more deep up top, I think. Like some of these guys up top, we talked about Metcalf, now we're talking about Allen. Some of these guys seem like straight studs, man. It's tough. Moving on. We've got the Green Bay Packers, Detroit Lions. We've got a 55.5 total. Damn, man. That's one of the highest ones on the slate. 55.5. The Packers opened up -8.5. They're down to -7.5. Talk to me about the Green Bay Packers.
The Packers, you got on the road. They are in Detroit. We have it's a divisional game. Detroit's feeling good, but Detroit's defense is absolutely god-awful in every sense of the word. To me, it's Aaron Rodgers is the QB1 this week that you just want to lock in if you're going to pay up. I feel like at 9,100, he's just going to keep throwing. And feel like that the the offense of the Lions played well enough last week in Chicago to where they got a little bit of mojo and stuff. And I think it's going to be a good game back and forth. So, I mean, Rodgers and Adams for sure, like stack them up. Aaron Jones, I think, has got a great matchup too. The only thing that would lead me to kind of be off of Aaron Jones a little bit because he knows that Jamal Williams is going to get his targets. And then Alan Lazard is another good option. Robert Tonyan is a decent option too. But mostly it's just Rodgers and Adams.
Yeah, I don't really have anything different. I'm good with Aaron Jones. Also, to add him to the list of awesome running backs we have against Detroit, especially if you anticipate Green Bay, destroying the Lions, which I think is on the table. Adams is 9,300 is very expensive, but there is not one person on this team that can come close to covering him. So if you can, I think it'll be contrarian even to even get up to him because of all the running back spend ups and all the other ones. I don't know. Maybe not. 9,300 is a lot of money. Christian McCaffrey, I think, is cheaper on DraftKings than Devontae Adams. But rightfully so from what we've seen, man. He looks like the best receiver in the NFL this year, at least from a fantasy perspective. And I'm good with Lazard settling on something like that. Rodgers looks fine. He does, and so does Jones. I mean, it's one of the higher totals that we've seen. Matchup is phenomenal, and to be honest, I would have thought the Packers would have been favored by more. I'm a little surprised it's only 7.5. To be honest, what about the Lions side?
The Lions side, I think it depends on whether we get DeAndre Swift back or not. I mean, a lot depends on that. I feel like if it does, you can run on Green Bay, and I feel like we could, you could do it. It just depends on he was like sick, and then he wasn't COVID, but I mean, when you get sick, a lot of times you get a lot of energy sapped out of you and stuff I don't know, like he might not be 100%, and it just might be a 3-headed monster that you just might not want anything out of it. Another guy you're wondering is if they could get Kenny Golladay back. He's been out for like 2 months, but they never put him on IR. I just, you can't really rely on him. And even if he does play, Marvin Jones would be the play with, Matt Stafford and Hawkinson. That's pretty much it. That's their offense right now. But that's it.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's Swift, assuming Swift is healthy. So that's the issue. If I was going to stack the Packers, I would probably prefer to go Rodgers with like Lazard and Adams or something with the receivers. And the only clear bringback option to me at that point is Swift because that's really been the main vulnerability of the Packers defense. They've been really bad against the run. They didn't do so bad against the Eagles, but the Eagles weren't really in a position to run the ball as effectively as they would have liked anyway. Not that they would have been able to. The team looks like they're in a shit show. But I think Swift would be the primary guy. So we're going to want to pay attention throughout the week and see if he's practicing in full, see how he looks. Because I think that they want Swift to be that feature guy to see what he's got and allow him to continue to excel and develop. But if he's sick, that's going to be a fucking issue. Or if he's, lost weight or anything like that, it's going to be an issue. But, I do like Swift. Add him to the list of running backs. We have a ton of running backs this week. Last game, Joe, we've got the Nolans Saints visiting the Philadelphia Eagles. They have a 44 total, down from 45. The Saints opened up -6.5. They're up to -7. This is not Drew Brees and Carson Wentz. No, Joe. It is Taysom Hill and Jalen Hurts. We're going to start off with the New Orleans side. Talk to me.
Yeah, the New Orleans side, we got Mr. Taysom Hill again. He's facing a defense that probably is not going to have Slay. So I feel like Michael Thomas is like my favorite play from this offense. Kamara has just been, neutered by Taysom Hill. If he didn't score those rushing touchdowns last week, he would have done nothing. So to me, it's Taysom Hill. If you wanted to, because he's got some rushing floor, and Michael Thomas for sure. And then you're gonna have another rookie quarterback facing a really good Saints defense. So if you're paying up, I don't mind the Saints defense too.
Saints defense will certainly provide some leverage. I get the feeling Hurts is going to be pretty popular. Hill I'm okay with, but I'm not like super into. I'd rather go all the way up or go all the way down at this point at quarterback. Not really into a ton on the Saints side. I think Michael Thomas at 7-1 is certainly in play. Especially if Darius Slay is out. Slay got hurt in that Packer game, I think. So if Slay is out, then even more so, I'd be willing to look towards Thomas, who seems to be comfortable. But Taysom Hill and the Saints offense until Breeze comes back. I mean, really, see, if Breeze was there, I would still like Thomas either way. Just wouldn't like Breeze. I would only play him at home. But with Hill, I get nervous about playing too many of the fantasy guys on the road in general. What about, and I agree that the Saints defense has been pretty solid this year from a fantasy perspective, and they could provide some leverage because Jalen Hurts, Joey, at 5-1 is looking pretty chalky on DraftKings, at least to start. Talk to me about the Eagles and Jalen Hurts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wonder if it wasn't just Philly and because it's an NFC East team or whatever, like, just everybody's on them. Like, if it was, I don't know, Cincinnati, would he be like, as popular as he would be right now? Like, it's definitely something that I want to hear some more things about, but I feel like I can understand the popularity. He kind of offers the rushing upside that, kind of like what Taysom Hill has. In limited work, he ran for 29 yards in limited work last week. So you feel like he's going to do that again. He threw a touchdown pass to Greg Ward. So I feel like if you were going to play him, I think you'd play him naked because I don't really know where he's going to go, even with the tight ends. Like, you just don't know. Like, Miles Sanders, you're done for the whole year. Like, you're seriously, like, there's no reason to play Miles Sanders again, mostly because it's not because he's not talented. It's because Doug Peterson is an absolute idiot. Tight end, it's basically I don't mind Goddard in a GPP setting. He's 5,600. I think he's the number one tight end in Philly, but I feel like Ertz is going to get targets too, so you just don't know how that's going to all shake out. And if he doesn't get in the end zone, it's not going to really be that good. But I don't mind Goddard at all, but that's it.
Yeah, I think I understand the Hurts, like the 5,100 rushing quarterback. I think people are looking at this similarly to what Taysom Hill was when we got him at 4,500. And he's going to allow you to help get some studs in there. I don't hate it. But my initial instinct is to kind of back away in tournaments and to look elsewhere, especially if he is going to be popular. There is an issue with Philly. Like, I don't think Philly's all of a sudden going to be able to score a ton of touchdowns just because Jalen Hurts is in there, right? Like, I think that they'll be different, and I think Hurts can pick up a lot of rushing yards, and I think that gives him a solid floor. But in tournaments, you also need ceiling. And I think we have some other quarterbacks on this slate that could really put up a monster ceiling, and I'm not sure just yet on Jalen Hurts. The Saints defense has been pretty good. And of course, it probably has something to do with me not liking feeling totally comfortable playing quarterbacks naked, and I'm not crazy about any of these receiving options. Goddard would be my pick also, but Ertz is back, and they're going to probably play him more and more as the weeks go on. My initial instinct is to step back a little bit, maybe in cash. I could see it and going naked with him because you're playing naked quarterbacks anyway, most likely. But in tournaments, my instinct is to kind of back away, and if everybody's going to do this, I'll do that. So if everybody's going to decide to pay down at 5-1, maybe I'll go up to the top. I don't know. That's what I'm thinking. Like that.
I see that. I feel like if you're doing that and you're playing Hurts, it's affording you to get Adams, Henry, DK, Allen, right? So you better get 3 or 4x out of those guys. Because if you don't, Watson, Mahomes, Rodgers, and Wilson, they're going to get 30 points, most likely, on Sunday. Right. So you're going to have to keep up with that. So I think it just puts more pressure on guys like, DK and Allen to really produce. Because if they don't, you're not going to catch.
Agreed. I agree. That is going to do it for the Game by Game first look. Appreciate those of you hanging out with us live, and those of you who took some time to listen to this or watch this throughout the week. We'll be back at it with the Y stream on Friday. Normally, that is our paid show. It's free this year. We give our final takes, go position by position. Myself, Patio, Joe, and Paulie D, all three of the OGs, yes. So make sure you check that out. Thursday night, I'll be back with Paulie doing the Thursday night football game showdown slate coverage. That'll be free on the channel as well. Make sure you subscribe, hit the notifications bell, don't miss out on any of the stuff we put out. NBA's coming. We're going to try to have something, maybe a cheat sheet or something for NBA preseason to kind of lead us up in there. So hopefully you guys are ready to come back. It'll be available at wisestake.com for Wisestake members. And then, of course, the NBA season starts in a couple weeks. We'll be ready for that. So, Nation, hit the like button if you haven't already. Joey, anything to close before we get up out of here?
Not much, man. Just guys, it's playoff times for seasonals. This is the fun time. It's Christmas time. I'm happy. I'm with it. Let's do this. Let's do the dirty, as you say.
All day. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe. Listener League. That's what I'm gonna say. Listener League is in the description. Make sure you join up. Let's have a little fun. Do the dirty for Patio Joe, for myself, the entire Wisestake Nation. As always, good luck.